Susan Miller had been working at the Westwood Hotel for just 3 weeks. She was 24 years old and thought of her job as a receptionist as a stepping stone to her dream job in hotel management. The Westwood was a fancy hotel in downtown Los Angeles, where many famous people stayed, but Susan hadn't met anyone really famous yet. On this Wednesday afternoon in June, the hotel lobby was quiet. The marble floor shined under the soft lights of the crystal chandeliers. 2 older couples sat in the plush chairs near the fireplace, talking quietly over coffee. A bellboy pushed an empty luggage cart toward the elevator. It was that slow, time between checkout and check-in, when Susan usually caught up on paperwork. Susan was tired. Her roommate Diane had thrown a party the night before, and Susan hadn't slept well. She had dark circles under her eyes that her makeup couldn't quite hide. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun that made her head hurt. Her feet were already sore from standing in the new shoes that the hotel dress code required. The morning shift had been busy with a tour group from Japan checking out all at once. 3 different guests had complained about their room keys not working, and Susan had to make new ones. Her boss, Paul Garcia, had scolded her for taking 2, along with a phone call. Now she just wanted the day to end so she could go home and sleep. Susan was typing guest information into the computer when she heard footsteps approaching the front desk. She didn't look up right away. She finished typing the sentence and then raised her eyes to see an older man standing there. He wore a simple gray suit that looked expensive but not flashy. His face was lined with wrinkles, and his hair was gray and thin. He stood very straight and tall for an older man. There was something about his eyes. They were sharp and clear, with a kind of intensity that made Susan feel a little nervous. But Susan was too tired to really notice these things. To her, he was just another guest, another problem to solve. Before she could finish her shift, "I need my room key, it's not working," the man said. His voice was low and rough like sandpaper on wood. Susan sighed loudly. Not another key problem. This was the 4th one today. Why couldn't people just keep their keys away from their phones? Everyone knew that phones could erase the magnetic strip. "Room number?" she asked in a flat voice. She didn't smile or make eye contact. She just looked at her computer screen, fingers ready to type. "Suite 512, the man replied. He didn't seem bothered by her rudeness, but he didn't seem pleased either. He just waited, standing perfectly still. Susan typed the room number into the system. Suite 512 was one of the most expensive rooms in the hotel, the kind with a separate living room and bedroom, a big bathroom with a hot tub, and a balcony with a view of the city. Whoever this man was, he had money. "Name?" Susan asked, still not looking at him. "Eastwood. Clint Eastwood." Now Susan glanced up briefly. The name sounded familiar, but in her tired state, she couldn't place it right away. She thought it might be a joke. Sometimes drunk businessmen thought it was funny to use celebrity names when checking in. "ID, please," she said, holding out her hand. The man reached for his wallet. His movements were slow but sure. He pulled out a California driver's license and handed it to Susan. She took it and looked at it closely. The name on the license did say Clinton Eastwood, Jr. There was a picture of the same man who stood before her, looking a bit younger. But anyone could fake an ID these days, she thought. Susan looked up at the man, then back at the ID, then at the man again. A small part of her brain was trying to tell her something important, but she was too tired and annoyed to listen. "You're saying you're the Clint Eastwood?" she asked with clear doubt in her voice. Her tone was almost mocking. "Sure, and I'm Angelina Jolie." A few guests sitting nearby looked up. A woman at the end of the counter, waiting to ask about restaurant reservations, raised her eyebrows and nudged her husband. The older man's eyes narrowed slightly. The lines around his mouth deepened, but his voice remained calm when he spoke. "Just need my key, miss?" Susan rolled her eyes. "Whatever you say, Mr. Hollywood," she said loudly. Several more people in the lobby turned to look. "Maybe next time you could try a more believable name. We get Clint Eastwood impersonators all the time." This was not true. In her 3 weeks at the hotel, Susan had never seen anyone claim to be Clint Eastwood or any other celebrity. But she was annoyed and wanted to make it clear that she wasn't falling for what she thought was a stupid joke. She began typing again, preparing to make a new key card. As she worked, she kept talking, her voice getting louder. I mean, if you're going to pretend to be famous, at least pick someone current. Clint Eastwood must be like, what, 100 years old by now? The woman waiting at the end of the counter gasped. Her husband shook his head slowly, a look of disbelief on his face. The bellboy who had been pushing the luggage cart stopped and stared, his mouth open in shock. The man who called himself Clint Eastwood didn't react much. His face remained mostly calm, but there was a tension in his jaw now, a slight tightening around his eyes. He didn't speak. He just waited, his posture straight, his eyes fixed on Susan. Susan kept typing, unaware of the stir she was causing. She was almost enjoying herself now, thinking she was cleverly handling a prankster. You know, the real Clint Eastwood probably stays at much fancier hotels than this one, like in Beverly Hills or something, not downtown. And he probably has people who get his room keys for him, assistants and stuff. She printed a new key card and slid it into a small paper envelope. She was about to hand it to the man when she heard quick footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Paul Garcia, the hotel manager, hurrying across the lobby. His face was pale and his eyes were wide with alarm. Paul was usually very calm and professional. He had worked at the Westwood for 15 years and had seen all kinds of situations. But now he looked truly upset. He reached the front desk and stood beside the older man, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Eastwood, it's an honor to have you with us again," Paul said, his voice higher than normal. He shot a warning glance at Susan that made her stomach drop. "Is there something I can help with?" Susan felt the blood drain from her face. Her fingers froze above the keyboard. She looked again at the man standing before her, really looked at him this time. The sharp eyes, the lined face with its distinctive features, the tall, lean build, the gravelly voice that had spoken millions of famous lines in dozens of famous movies. It really was Clint Eastwood, the director, actor, and Hollywood legend. The man who had played Dirty Harry and The Man with No Name. The man who had won multiple Academy Awards, one of the most recognizable and respected figures in the film industry. And she had just insulted him to his face in front of a lobby full of people. Susan felt sick. Her hands began to shake. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, and her face grew hot with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Paul quickly took the key envelope from Susan's trembling hand. He checked it, and then presented it to Mr. Eastwood with a small bow. "I've personally made sure your suite is prepared exactly as you requested, Mr. Eastwood. The extra towels, the specific bottled water, and the bowl of fruit without bananas. Everything is ready for you." Clint Eastwood accepted the key with a small nod. His eyes moved from Paul to Susan, who sat frozen in her chair, her face now bright red with shame. "No harm done," he said quietly. But his eyes told a different story. They weren't angry exactly. They were evaluating her, taking her measure in a way that made Susan feel like she was being seen completely, all her flaws exposed. He turned and walked toward the elevator. Everyone in the lobby watched him go. A few people took out their phones trying to take discreet pictures. When the elevator doors closed behind him, a buzz of excited whispers filled the lobby. Susan looked at Paul. His face had gone from pale to red. "In my office now," he said through clenched teeth. Susan knew her job was in serious trouble. But worse than that was the feeling that she had been small and mean to someone for no reason. She had judged too quickly and acted rudely, and not just to anyone, but to Clint Eastwood himself. As she followed Paul to his office, Susan wondered if she would ever be able to live down what she had just done. Susan sat in Paul's office staring at the floor. Her hands were shaking. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Paul stood by the window, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. He hadn't spoken for almost a minute. The silence was worse than yelling. "Do you know who Clint Eastwood is?" Paul finally asked. His voice was quiet but tense. Susan nodded. "Yes, he's a famous actor and director." She felt stupid saying it now. Of course she knew who Clint Eastwood was. Everyone did. How had she not recognized him? He's not just a famous actor, Paul said, turning to face her. He's a legend. He's Hollywood royalty. He's won 5 Academy Awards. He's directed over 30 films. He's been a star for more than 60 years. Paul took a deep breath. And you just insulted him in front of a lobby full of people. Susan felt tears forming in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I was tired, and I thought he was joking. I didn't really look at him. The excuses sounded weak even to her own ears. Paul sat down at his desk. Mr. Eastwood isn't just any guest, Susan. He's here scouting locations for his new film. The Westwood was on his list of potential filming sites. Do you understand what that would mean for this hotel? The publicity? The prestige? The money? Susan hadn't known this. She felt even worse now. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Maybe, Paul said. Mr. Eastwood is meeting with his production team in our conference room tomorrow. The hotel owner, Mr. Kent, is flying in from New York specifically to join them. He looked at Susan with tired eyes. I have to tell Mr. Kent what happened. He won't be happy. Susan wiped her eyes. Will I lose my job? Paul was quiet for a moment. I don't know. That depends on Mr. Kent, and on whether Mr. Eastwood decides to take his business elsewhere. He looked at his watch. Your shift is over. Go home. Come back tomorrow at 7. We'll talk more then. Susan left Paul's office feeling numb. The hotel lobby seemed different now. Everyone was looking at her. The other staff. The guests. News traveled fast in a hotel. She hurried through the lobby, her eyes on the floor, and went out the front doors. Outside, the late afternoon sun was bright. Cars moved slowly in the downtown traffic. People walked quickly on the sidewalks, heading home from work. Everything seemed normal, but Susan felt like her world had turned upside down. She had made the biggest mistake of her short career, and she didn't know how to fix it. She took the bus home, sitting alone in the back. She didn't want to talk to anyone. She kept seeing Clint Eastwood's face in her mind. Not angry, just watching her, seeing through her. It made her feel small and ashamed. Susan's apartment was empty when she got home. Her roommate Diane had left a note saying she was out with friends and would be back late. Susan was glad to be alone. She changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt and sat on the couch staring at the wall. She picked up her phone and searched for Clint Eastwood. Hundreds of images appeared, movies, awards, ceremonies, interviews. How had she not recognized that face? Those eyes. She clicked on a video of him accepting an Academy Award. His speech was short and humble. He thanked the people who had helped him make the film. He made a small joke that made the audience laugh. He seemed kind and grateful. Not at all like the type of person who would try to get a receptionist fired for being rude. Maybe there was hope. Maybe he would understand that she had made a mistake. Maybe he wouldn't tell the hotel to fire her. Susan's phone rang. It was her mother. Hi, Mom, Susan said, trying to sound normal. What's wrong? Her mother asked immediately. She could always tell when Susan was upset. Susan started crying. Through tears, she told her mother what had happened, how she had been rude to Clint Eastwood, how she might lose her job. Oh, honey, her mother said when Susan finished. That's a tough one. What should I do, Mom? Susan asked, wiping her eyes. Well, you can't change what happened, her mother said. But you can show that you're sorry and that you've learned from it. If you get a chance to apologize to Mr. Eastwood directly, do it. Be sincere. Don't make excuses. And if they fire me, then you'll find another job. This isn't the end of the world, Susan. It's embarrassing, yes. It might have consequences, yes, but you'll get through it. After talking to her mother, Susan felt a little better. She made herself a sandwich, but could only eat half of it. She tried to watch TV but couldn't focus. Finally, she went to bed early, but sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, Susan woke up at 5. She showered and dressed carefully, picking her nicest work clothes. She put on makeup to cover the dark circles under her eyes. She left for work early, wanting to be there before anyone else. The hotel was quiet when she arrived. The night manager, Bill, was still at the front desk. He raised his eyebrows when he saw her. "Heard you had quite a day yesterday," he said. Susan nodded. "Is Mr. Eastwood still here?" "Oh, he's here all right," Bill said. "Suite 512. Hasn't complained or anything. His assistant came down last night to confirm the conference room reservation for today. 10 people, lunch for 12. Susan felt a small ray of hope. If Clint Eastwood was still planning to use the conference room, maybe he wasn't going to take his film somewhere else. Maybe her mistake hadn't ruined everything. Paul arrived at 6:30. He looked surprised to see Susan already there. "You're early," he said. "I wanted to talk to you before my shift," Susan said. "I want to apologize to Mr. Eastwood properly," Paul frowned. "I don't think that's a good idea. Mr. Kent will be here in an hour. He's not happy about what happened." "Please," Susan said. "I need to try to make this right." Paul thought for a moment. "Mr. Eastwood ordered breakfast to be sent up at 7. I'll let you take it up instead of room service, but Susan, be professional, don't make things worse." At 7 o'clock, Susan stood outside Suite 512 with a cart of covered breakfast dishes. Her heart was racing. She had practiced what she wanted to say, but now her mind was blank. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door. After a moment, the door opened. Clint Eastwood stood there, dressed in a white bathrobe. He looked at Susan and his eyes narrowed slightly. "Room service," Susan said quietly. "May I bring in your breakfast, Mr. Eastwood?" He nodded and stepped back, holding the door open. Susan pushed the cart into the suite. It was large and elegant, with a separate living room and bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of the city and the mountains beyond. Susan parked the cart near the dining table. Her hands were shaking as she began to uncover the dishes. "Mr. Eastwood," she said, her voice trembling a little. "I'm Susan Miller. I was the receptionist yesterday, who was rude to you. I want to apologize. I was completely out of line. I didn't recognize you, but that's no excuse for how I acted." Clint Eastwood watched her, his face giving nothing away. He didn't speak. Susan continued. "I understand if you want me fired. I would deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm truly sorry, and I hope that my behavior doesn't affect your decision about using this hotel for your film. The Westwood is a wonderful hotel, and everyone else here is professional and respectful." She finished uncovering the dishes. There was fresh fruit, an omelet, toast, coffee, and orange juice. She stood back from the cart, waiting for him to respond. Clint Eastwood walked over to the cart and looked at the food. Then he looked at Susan. "Everyone makes mistakes," he said finally, his voice low and gravelly. "It's what you do after that counts." Susan felt tears in her eyes again, but she blinked them away. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Eastwood. I won't bother you anymore." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "How long have you worked here?" 3 weeks, Susan replied. He nodded slowly. "First job in a hotel?" "Yes, sir. I studied hospitality management in college. I want to be a hotel manager someday." Clint Eastwood poured himself a cup of coffee. "Tough business. Need thick skin?" He took a sip of coffee. "Not bad. Thank you for breakfast." Susan knew she was being dismissed. "Enjoy your meal, Mr. Eastwood. And again, I'm very sorry." As she left the suite, Susan felt a strange mixture of relief and worry. He hadn't yelled at her. He had even been somewhat kind. But she still didn't know if she would have a job by the end of the day. Susan returned to the lobby after delivering breakfast to Clint Eastwood. Her mind was racing. He had been surprisingly kind to her, but she still didn't know if she would keep her job. She saw Paul talking to a tall man in an expensive suit near the front desk. The man looked angry. Susan knew this must be Mr. Kent, the hotel owner. Paul saw Susan and waved her over. Susan walked slowly toward them, her stomach tight with fear. "Mr. Kent, this is Susan Miller," Paul said. His voice was formal and cold. Mr. Kent looked at Susan with hard eyes. He was about 60, with gray hair and a deep tan. His suit probably cost more than Susan made in a month. "So you're the one who insulted Clint Eastwood," he said. It wasn't a question. Susan nodded. "Yes, sir. I've just been to apologize to him." Mr. Kent's eyebrows went up. "You did what?" "I took up his breakfast and apologized in person," Susan said. Her voice was small but steady. Paul looked surprised. "I told you to be professional." "What did he say?" "He said everyone makes mistakes," Susan replied. He was kind about it." Mr. Kent and Paul exchanged looks. "Well, that's something at least," Mr. Kent said. "But this is still a serious problem. We've been trying to get Eastwood to use the Westwood for his films for years. If we lose this opportunity because of your rudeness—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. "I understand, sir," Susan said. "I'll accept whatever decision you make about my job." Mr. Kent checked his watch. "The meeting starts in an hour. We'll see how it goes. Until then, stay away from the conference room. In fact, stay in the back office. I don't want you anywhere near Eastwood or his team." Susan spent the morning in the small back office sorting mail and filing papers. It was boring work, but she was grateful to still be employed, at least for now. She could hear activity in the lobby as Clint Eastwood's production team arrived. There were voices, footsteps, the sound of the elevator. Susan wanted to look, but she stayed in the back office as ordered. Around noon, Lisa, one of the other receptionists, came into the back office. "They're having lunch in the conference room," Lisa said. "Mr. Kent is with them. Paul is freaking out because the chef made the wrong dessert." "How's it going?" Susan asked. "Do they seem interested in using the hotel for the film?" Lisa shrugged. "Hard to tell. They're looking at floor plans and taking lots of pictures. Eastwood seems to like the place, but one of the producers keeps talking about some other hotel." An hour later, Paul came to find Susan. His face was unreadable. "They're done with lunch," he said. "Mr. Eastwood asked if you could bring in coffee for everyone." Susan froze. "Me? Are you sure?" Paul nodded. "That's what he said. He asked for you by name." He looked at her closely. "This could be good or bad, Susan. Be careful." Susan's hand shook as she prepared a large tray of coffee cups, cream, and sugar. She tried to calm herself as she walked to the conference room. Why would Clint Eastwood ask for her? Was he going to embarrass her in front of everyone? Was he going to complain about her to Mr. Kent? She knocked on the conference room door. A woman opened it. She was about 50 with short dark hair and glasses. She wore a business suit and had a clipboard in her hand. "I have coffee," Susan said quietly. The woman nodded and held the door open. "Come in. Put it on the side table." Susan entered the room. There was a long table in the center. Around it sat about 10 people, some in suits, others in casual clothes. Clint Eastwood was at the head of the table. Mr. Kent sat next to him, looking tense but hopeful. There were papers and laptops on the table and large photos of different parts of the hotel. Susan walked to the side table and began setting out the coffee cups. She could feel people watching her. She kept her eyes down, focusing on her task. "Is this the girl?" a man asked. He had a beard and wore a plaid shirt. "Yes," Clint Eastwood replied. "Susan." Susan looked up, surprised to hear him use her name. Clint Eastwood was watching her with those same intense eyes. "Susan, these are the people making my new film. We're looking at the Westwood as a possible location." Susan wasn't sure what to say. "It's a beautiful hotel," she managed. The man with the beard laughed. "After what Clint told us you said yesterday, I'm surprised you're still singing its praises." Susan felt her face get hot. "I made a terrible mistake yesterday. I'm very sorry." Clint Eastwood held up a hand. "Already dealt with." He looked at the others around the table. "What do you think?" A woman with red hair spoke up. "The lobby has great light. Those chandeliers would look amazing on camera, and the marble floor gives us good reflection." The suite is perfect for the main character, another man said. Exactly what the script describes. The other hotel has a bigger ballroom, said the man with the beard, and they're offering a better deal. Mr. Kent leaned forward. We can match any offer from the Marquis, Tom. And our ballroom might be smaller, but it has more character. Those archways, the gold leaf on the ceiling. Clint Eastwood turned to Susan. What do you think makes the Westwood special? Susan was shocked that he was asking her opinion. Everyone was looking at her now. Mr. Kent seemed terrified about what she might say. Susan took a deep breath. The Westwood has history. It was built in 1928. Movie stars have been staying here for almost 100 years. She gained confidence as she spoke. Each room is different. They all have their own character. The other hotels downtown are newer, but they all look the same inside. And our staff? She paused, thinking of her own behavior. Well, most of our staff are amazing. They really care about the guests. There was silence when she finished. Then the woman with red hair nodded. She's right about the character. You can feel the history in this place. Clint Eastwood looked at Susan for a long moment. Then he turned to Mr. Kent. We'll use the Westwood, main character's hotel in the script. Shooting starts in 3 months. Need 10 rooms for crew, the big suite for me. 30 days total. Mr. Kent's face lit up. Wonderful, we're honored, Mr. Eastwood. You won't regret it. The meeting broke up shortly after that. People gathered their papers and laptops, talking excitedly. Mr. Kent was shaking hands with everyone, smiling widely. Susan started to clear away the coffee cups. Clint Eastwood approached her as she worked. Got a minute? He asked quietly. Susan nodded, nervous again. Outside, he said, nodding toward the door. They stepped into the hallway. Susan waited, her heart pounding. You know about the hotel's history, Eastwood said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Susan replied. I studied it before. I applied for the job. I've always loved old hotels. Eastwood nodded slowly. My character in the film? He's a retired detective. Stays at the same hotel every year, same room. Hotel is important in the story. That sounds interesting, Susan said, not sure where this was going. Need someone who knows the hotel, consultant, history, layout, how things work. He looked at her directly. Interested? Susan couldn't believe what she was hearing. You want me to be a consultant for your film? Small role too. Hotel worker. Few lines. If you want it. Susan was speechless. This couldn't be happening. Yesterday she had insulted this man to his face, and today he was offering her a job in his movie? Why? She managed to ask. After what I did? Eastwood's mouth twitched in what might have been a small smile. Got fire, spoke your mind, made a mistake, owned it. Good qualities. He paused. Plus, you know this place. That's valuable. I don't know what to say, Susan admitted. Say yes or no, Eastwood replied simply. Yes, Susan said quickly. Yes, I'd be honored. Eastwood nodded once. Good. My assistant will contact you. Details, paperwork. He turned to go, then looked back. Still have your job here? Susan realized she didn't know. I'm not sure, she said honestly. You will, Eastwood said. Then he walked away, joining his team as they headed for the elevators. Susan stood in the hallway, stunned. Had that really just happened? Had Clint Eastwood really offered her a job? In his movie? It seemed impossible. A moment later, Mr. Kent came out of the conference room. He was smiling broadly. Well, Susan, he said, it seems you've made quite an impression on Mr. Eastwood. He just told me you'll be working with his production team as a consultant, and that he expects you to still have your job here when filming starts. He shook, his head in disbelief. I don't know how you managed to turn this around, but you did. Paul will adjust your schedule so you can do both jobs. Susan couldn't help but smile. Thank you, Mr. Kent. As Mr. Kent walked away, Susan thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday had been the worst day of her career. Today might be the best. All because she had made a mistake, admitted it, and been given a second chance by a man who saw something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. 3 months passed quickly. Susan continued working at the Westwood Hotel, but everything was different now. Paul gave her more responsibilities. The other staff treated her with new respect. Guests sometimes asked if she was the one who would be in Clint Eastwood's new movie. Word had spread fast. Susan used her free time to prepare for her role in the film. She read books about the movie industry. She watched Clint Eastwood's films to understand his directing style. She even took an acting class at the community center on weekends. 1 week before filming was set to begin, a woman named Maria Rivera came to the hotel. She was Clint Eastwood's assistant director. She had short black hair and a businesslike manner. She asked for Susan at the front desk. "I need to talk to you about your role," Maria said. "Can you take a break?" They sat in the hotel coffee shop. Maria had a thick folder of papers. She took out a small stack and handed them to Susan. "These are your scenes," Maria said. "You have more lines than we originally planned. Clint liked your background story about the hotel, so he had the writers add more dialogue for you." Susan looked at the script pages with amazement. Her character's name was Emma, and she was a hotel concierge who helps the main character, a retired detective named Frank Miller. "You'll need to memorize all of this," Maria said. "We shoot your scenes next Tuesday and Wednesday." Susan nodded, feeling both excited and nervous. "I'll be ready." "There's something else," Maria added. "Clint wants you to help with more than just your scenes. He wants you on set every day as a consultant for all the hotel scenes. That means you'll need to take a leave from your job here for the next month." "I don't know if that's possible," Susan said. "Mr. Kent said I could work both jobs, but he meant part-time." Maria smiled slightly. "It's already arranged. Clint called Mr. Kent yesterday. You'll be paid as a full-time consultant. It's all in this contract." She pushed another set of papers across the table. Susan looked at the contract. The payment amount made her eyes widen. It was more than she made in 3 months at the hotel. "This is very generous," she said quietly. "Clint values expertise," Maria replied, "and authenticity. That's why he wants you there." She checked her watch. "I need to go. Read the script. Be at this address Monday morning at 7 a.m. for costume fitting." She handed Susan a card with an address. "Any questions?" Susan had 1,000 questions, but she could only manage one. Why me? Why did he choose me for this? Maria studied her for a moment. "Clint has been making movies for over 60 years. He trusts his instincts about people. He saw something in you." She stood up. "Don't be late on Monday." The weekend passed in a blur. Susan read her script pages over and over until she knew every word. She practiced in front of her bathroom mirror. Her roommate Diane helped by reading the other parts. "This is crazy," Diane said. 3 months ago you insulted Clint Eastwood to his face, and now you're in his movie. Things like this don't happen in real life." "I know," Susan agreed. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and find out it was all a dream." On Monday morning, Susan took a taxi to the address Maria had given her. It was a large warehouse in an industrial area. Inside, it had been converted into offices, dressing rooms, and workshop spaces. People hurried around carrying costumes, props, and equipment. No one paid attention to Susan until a young man with a clipboard approached her. "Are you Susan Miller?" he asked. Susan nodded. "I'm Jake, production assistant. Maria asked me to take you to costume." He led her through the busy warehouse to a room filled with racks of clothes. A woman with glasses and measuring tape around her neck greeted them. "You must be our hotel expert," she said. "I'm Patty, costume designer. Let's get you fitted." Patty showed Susan several hotel uniforms. They decided on a simple black suit with a blue shirt that matched the Westwood Hotel's colors. After the fitting, Jake took Susan to meet with the production designer, who wanted to discuss the hotel's layout and decorations. By the end of the day, Susan had met dozens of people and answered hundreds of questions about hotels. Everyone treated her like a valuable team member, not just an extra with a few lines. It was overwhelming but exciting. Tuesday morning, Susan arrived at the Westwood Hotel at 6 a.m., but this time, She wasn't there to work at the front desk. The hotel lobby had been transformed overnight. Huge lights stood in the corners. Cables ran across the floor. Cameras on wheels were positioned near the front desk. A group of people with headsets and clipboards moved around, speaking in low voices. Maria saw Susan and waved her over. "Good, you're early. Go to the conference room. It's been set up as a makeup and costume area. Get ready, then come back here. Clint wants to talk to you before we start shooting." In the conference room, Susan found several other actors getting their makeup done. One of them was Frank Gordon, a famous actor who was playing the detective's partner in the film. He smiled at Susan as she sat in the makeup chair next to his. "You must be the hotel girl," he said. "Clint told me about you." "Yes, I'm Susan," she replied nervously. "First film?" Frank asked. Susan nodded. "Don't worry," he said kindly. "Clint's sets are very relaxed. No shouting, no drama. He usually gets what he wants in 1 or 2 takes. Just be natural." After makeup and costume, Susan returned to the lobby. Clint Eastwood was standing near the front desk, talking to the cinematographer. When he saw Susan, he motioned for her to join them. "Morning," he said. "Ready?" "I think so," Susan replied. A little nervous. Eastwood nodded. "Natural. Everyone is first time." He turned to the cinematographer. "This is the real deal. Worked here when we found the place." The cinematographer, an older man with a beard, looked at Susan with interest. "That gives us something special. Authenticity." Eastwood turned back to Susan. "First scene. I play Frank Miller, retired detective. You're at desk. I ask about previous guest. Simple." "I've memorized all my lines," Susan assured him. "Good," Eastwood said. "But don't worry too much about exact words. Natural is better. Know the meaning, not just words." He looked around the lobby. "Your workplace. You know it. Use that." Soon the lobby was ready for filming. The director of photography called for quiet. Clint Eastwood took his position near the hotel entrance. Susan stood behind the front desk, her heart pounding. A young woman held a slate in front of the camera and called out, "Scene 12, take 1. Action," called Maria. Clint Eastwood walked slowly into the lobby. He looked older and more tired than in real life, hunched slightly as he moved. He was playing a character now. He approached the front desk. "Excuse me," he said in his gravelly voice. "I'm looking for information about a guest who stayed here last month. Name's Walter Spencer." Susan took a breath and became Emma, the concierge. "I'm sorry, sir, we can't give out information about our guests. It's hotel policy." "I understand," Eastwood's character said. "I'm a retired police detective. It's important." He placed a card on the counter. "Frank Miller. Worked homicide for 30 years. Susan looked at the card, then at him. "What kind of information are you looking for, Mr. Miller?" "Just dates. When he checked in, when he left." Susan pretended to type on the computer. "Mr. Spencer stayed with us from April 3rd to April 7th. Checked out in the morning." She leaned forward slightly. "He's been a regular guest here for years. Is he in some kind of trouble?" "Don't know yet," Eastwood replied. "Did he meet with anyone while he was here? Have any visitors?" Susan paused just as the script directed. "I'm not supposed to say this, but he had dinner with a woman in our restaurant, 2 nights in a row. The same woman. Remember what she looked like? Blonde, expensively dressed. They sat in the back corner. Seemed like they didn't want to be noticed." Susan hesitated again. "This hotel has been here since 1928, Mr. Miller. We've seen a lot of secrets come and go. We know how to be discreet." "Cut," Maria called. "Perfect. Let's go once more for safety, then move on to the next setup." They filmed the scene again, then moved to another part of the lobby for a different scene. By the end of the day, Susan had done all her scenes for Tuesday, and even helped with some scenes she wasn't in, advising on how hotel staff would handle certain situations. As the crew packed up for the day, Clint Eastwood approached Susan. "Good work," he said simply. "Thank you," Susan replied, still amazed that this was all happening. "It was easier than I expected." "Natural talent," Eastwood said. "Being yourself on camera. Not easy for most people. Will I see you tomorrow?" Susan asked. Eastwood nodded. Early. Restaurant scenes. Need your eye for details. He started to walk away, then turned back. Strange how things work out. If you'd recognized me that first day, wouldn't be here now. Susan smiled. I guess I made the right mistake. Eastwood's face creased in a rare smile. See you tomorrow. As Susan left the hotel that evening, she looked back at the place where she had worked as a simple receptionist just 3 months ago. Now it was a movie set, and she was part of the film. Life could change so fast, in ways no one could predict. She had insulted Clint Eastwood, and somehow, that had led to the most exciting opportunity of her life. 6 months after filming ended at the Westwood Hotel, Susan stood in front of her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself. She wore a long blue dress that sparkled under the light. Her hair was styled by a professional. Her makeup was perfect. A car was waiting outside to take her to the premiere of Clint Eastwood's new film, The Last Case. The month of filming had changed Susan's life in ways she never expected. She had worked every day alongside Clint Eastwood and his team. Her role had grown from a few lines to several important scenes. The retired detective's relationship with her character, Emma the hotel concierge, had become a small but meaningful part of the story. When filming ended, Susan had returned to her job at the Westwood. But things were different now. Mr. Kent had promoted her to assistant manager. Hotel guests sometimes recognized her from news stories about the film, and she had started taking acting classes at night, discovering a new passion. Susan's phone rang. It was her mother. Are you ready for the big night? Her mother asked. I think so, Susan replied. I still can't believe this is happening. We're so proud of you, honey. Your father is wearing his best suit. We'll see you at the theater. The studio had sent tickets for Susan's parents to attend the premiere. They had never been to a Hollywood event before, and were thrilled. Susan looked at the clock. It was time to go. She grabbed her small purse and took one last look in the mirror. The girl who had once insulted Clint Eastwood was now going to walk the red carpet at his film premiere. Life was strange and wonderful. The car dropped Susan off at the famous Chinese theater in Hollywood. There were crowds behind barriers, photographers, with flashing cameras, and television crews with bright lights. Susan felt overwhelmed as she stepped onto the red carpet. A young woman with a clipboard approached her. Ms. Miller, I'm Kate from the studio. I'll guide you through the red carpet. Some photographers might want to take your picture. Just smile and keep walking. Mr. Eastwood asked that you join the cast for the group photos near the entrance. We're nodded, trying to stay calm. She followed Kate along the red carpet. A few photographers took her picture. Someone called out, Susan, over here. She smiled and waved, feeling like she was in a dream. Near the theater entrance, the main cast was gathering for photos. Frank Gordon, who played the detective's partner, saw Susan and waved her over. Hotel girl, he called with a smile. You look amazing. Come join us. Susan stood with the cast as photographers took pictures. Then someone said, Mr. Eastwood is here. The crowd at the barriers cheered as Clint Eastwood walked slowly down the red carpet. He stopped to sign autographs and talk to reporters. When he reached the cast, everyone greeted him with respect and affection. He shook hands with each actor. When he got to Susan, he stopped. The real hotel expert, he said with a small smile. Glad you could come. Thank you for inviting me, Susan replied. And my parents too, they're already inside. Eastwood nodded. Want to meet them after the film? He looked at her thoughtfully. Nervous about seeing yourself on screen? A little, Susan admitted. Don't be, he said. You did good work, natural. That's what matters. They all went inside for the screening. Susan found her parents in the special section reserved for cast and crew. Her mother hugged her tightly. You look beautiful, sweetheart, she said. And we saw you with Clint Eastwood on the red carpet. He wants to meet you both after the film, Susan told them. Her father looked stunned. Meet Clint Eastwood? I've been watching his movies since I was a boy. The lights dimmed and the film began. Susan watched, fascinated as the story unfolded on the big screen. It was strange to see familiar places from the Westwood Hotel transformed by lighting and camera angles. The lobby where she had worked every day looked mysterious and elegant. When Susan first appeared on screen as Emma the concierge, her mother squeezed her hand tightly. Susan held her breath, watching herself talk to Clint Eastwood's character. She was surprised by how natural she looked. She had been so nervous that day, but on screen she seemed confident and professional. As the film continued, Susan realized that her role was even bigger than she had thought. The scenes she had filmed had been edited together in a way that made Emma an important character who helped the detective solve the mystery. In the final scenes, Emma even helped catch the criminal in the hotel lobby. When the film ended, the audience applauded loudly. The lights came up, and people began to stand. Maria, the assistant director, appeared beside Susan. "Clint wants the main cast to come to the front for a Q&A session," she said. "That includes you." Susan looked at her parents in surprise. Her father gave her a thumbs up. She followed Maria to the front of the theater where chairs had been set up. Clint Eastwood, Frank Gordon, and the other main actors were already seated. Susan took the last empty chair. A woman with a microphone introduced the cast and began asking questions. Most were for Clint Eastwood about his directing choices and the themes of the film. Some were for the other main actors. Then the woman turned to Susan. "Susan Miller, you play Emma, the hotel concierge who helped solve the mystery. But I understand this was your first acting role and you came to it in an unusual way. Can you tell us about that?" Susan glanced at Clint Eastwood, who nodded slightly. She took the microphone. "Well, I was working as a receptionist at the Westwood Hotel when Mr. Eastwood came in as a guest. I didn't recognize him and was not very polite." There was laughter from the audience. "I thought he was joking when he said his name. The next day I was sure I would lose my job. But instead, when his team came to look at the hotel as a filming location, he offered me a small role in the film and hired me as a consultant because I knew the hotel so well." The woman with the microphone looked surprised. "So you went from insulting Clint Eastwood to being in his movie? That's incredible." "I learned an important lesson," Susan said. "Everyone makes mistakes. It's what you do afterward that matters." She realized she was quoting what Eastwood had said to her that first morning when she brought his breakfast. After the Q&A session, there was a small reception in the theater lobby. Susan introduced her parents to Clint Eastwood, who spoke with them kindly for several minutes. Her father could hardly speak. He was so excited to meet his hero. Later, as the reception was ending, a woman in an expensive suit approached Susan. She handed Susan a business card. "I'm Elaine Parker from Central Casting," she said. "You have a natural quality on screen that's rare. If you're interested in more acting work, call me. I think you have a future in this business." Susan took the card, surprised. "Thank you. I've been taking classes, but I didn't think about it," Elaine said. "You've already got one Clint Eastwood film on your resume. That's a start most actors would kill for." As Susan and her parents left the theater, her mother asked, "What will you do now? Will you keep working at the hotel or try acting?" "I don't know," Susan replied honestly. "I love my job at the hotel, especially now that I'm assistant manager. But I loved being on set too. Maybe I can do both for a while." Her father put his arm around her shoulders. "Whatever you decide, we're behind you. Who would have thought that being rude to Clint Eastwood would turn out to be the best career move ever?" Susan laughed. As they walked to their car, she looked back at the theater where her face had just been on the big screen. Life took strange turns. One day you could make the worst mistake of your career, and the next day that mistake could open doors you never imagined. She thought about what Clint Eastwood had said to her that first day. "Everyone makes mistakes. It's what you do after that counts." She had apologized sincerely. She had worked hard to prove herself, and somehow, that had been enough to turn a disaster into an opportunity. Susan Miller, former receptionist, now assistant hotel manager and movie actress, smiled as she got into the car with her parents. She didn't know what would happen next in her life, but she was ready for whatever adventures might come.